Isn't it funny that the biggest thing promoting the DCU right now is a Marvel movie? Because Jesus Christ, with this bastard at the helm of the DCU, yeah, we're in good hands. Hi, I'm Bayfond, and I've been completely blindsided by Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. A movie that I didn't really expect too much out of. And now, well, I'm here talking about how great it is. It's so great, in fact, that I think it's actually among like my top 3 or top 5 favorite Marvel movies of all time. And that's because it does so many things right. And that's mainly in regards to the entirety of the superhero genre. It doesn't go against conventional means. If anything, it actually follows the formula to the T, but it does it in a really original way that we really don't get to see too much of. This movie is the perfect balance of dark and gritty with goofy, lighthearted fun. The comedic fun part of it is something we all expected because that's something that the Guardians franchise is just built around. So much so that I actually kind of dislike the first 2 Guardians. They're movies that don't take themselves seriously enough and actually, in my opinion, underuse their characters. In the first 2 movies, I thought Rocket was fun. He was a bit of an asshole, but he always had that snarky remark that would make you just, like him. But in Guardians 3, he's not just what I consider to be the main character, he's the emotional core of the entire film. And when I bring up the topic of dark and gritty, I'm not talking about something like a Snyder film. I would say it's because it's mostly dealing with heavy themes like abuse, hate, and grief. Things that other Marvel movies have definitely explored. A great example would be Wakanda Forever. But in contrast, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 didn't have that emotional backbone that, Wakanda Forever had because of the real-life event of Chadwick's tragic passing. The fact that I almost teared up for a CGI raccoon is astonishing, and it's all implemented really well. In this movie, I would say, out of every other Marvel project, we see a group of heroes that actually feels like a family. They're always bickering and squabbling, they get angry, they yell at each other, but it feels natural, it feels real. You get tired from hanging out with your crew for 10 years, but then again, you also feel that there's that big sense that everyone cares for each other. Characters like Peter Quill are given a lot to do in this film, so much so that I think it improves his character tenfold. I was never a big fan of Star-Lord in general. It can be for any number of reasons. He was too dumb, the way that he almost destroyed the entire universe, and then there's the fact that maybe I just didn't buy Chris Pratt's performance overall in the first 2 movies. But here, I completely had a 180 with him. I mean, goddamn, Peter Quill is pretty fantastic. We get reintroduced to him as just being completely down in the dumps, still grieving after years by being like an alcoholic. He seems like he's completely washed up, but throughout it, you still see that he's got this charismatic edge to him still. This was probably the most charming I thought Chris Pratt has ever been, and that's a surprise because I actually really like the Mario movie. Never thought that bastard would really win me over. And his performance also allowed for the all-new, all-different Gamora to jump in and just completely wreck shop because she is not the Gamora you remember. A complete asshole in every way. I love this version. And the way that her arc ends in the film ends up in a really satisfying way because it leaves things up in the air for the future. Drax and Mantis are the comedic foil for a lot of the film, but they also have some really hard-hitting moments. I would say Drax in particular, towards the end of the film, does something that we really haven't seen since the first film. And even then, it was only mentioned. They really actually gave him a purpose at the end. And then there's Nebula, who I didn't really expect to be one of the MVPs in the film. Once again, they gave her character a lot to work with here, and they actually played out with a lot of things that I never really took into account following other Marvel movies, such as her connection with Rocket. It's something that's always been there that we've never actually focused on. They were the only 2 Guardians that stayed alive during the snap, so their connection is an additional 5 years on top of being with everyone else, and you can feel that here in the movie. And the new cast as well actually did a phenomenal job. Adam Warlock is someone that I think is probably going to be the biggest point of contention for people that watch the film. He's a character that is supposed to be one way in the comics and actually turns out to be very, very different in the movie. They give a canonical reason as to why he's like this, and to be honest, I think it actually works. He's in some hilarious scenes, and to be honest, I laughed too hard at one of them. It's the one where he just switches up so quick. He's just kind of like a lovable character in my eyes. And we also get to see Rocket's friends with Lila, Floor, and Teeth, and I absolutely adored these 3. I didn't give a shit that they were CGI characters doing their things on the screen. I saw them and viewed them as real characters that I cared about. The way that their story goes might be the most predictable thing that you've probably ever seen in a Marvel movie, but you're gonna be hooked. And I would say this is gonna be greatly helped due to none other than the High Evolutionary himself. A character who is actually scary. A character that is so evil and ruthless that you just can't not hate him. So far, we haven't seen Kang as a major villain yet, but I would say that the High Evolutionary is what Kang could have been in Quantumania. And to be honest, it blew me away how good he was. This is Thanos' God complex taken into the opposite direction. Fantastic work here overall. And I would say this time around, we also get to see probably some of the best side characters we've seen in a Marvel movie. Actors like Nathan Fillion just coming in and stealing the show whenever he's on screen makes sense. Yeah, some of the running jokes that these characters have are just brilliant. I couldn't get enough of it at times. James Gunn definitely knows these characters in and out, and he's got his own visions about how everything plays out. The body horror in this is phenomenal. I would even say that it's better than some horror movies I've seen lately. And the characters get into some really dark places too, and for good reason too. There's a bunch of scenes in here that could really traumatize a kid that's under 10. I mean, there's lots of violence, corpses, blood, and like body parts falling off sometimes. It's brutal and it's fantastic. I felt like there was a lot of elements that James Gunn used that were like in his previous works as well. Not just Guardians of the Galaxy, but things that I would say were like very Peacemaker or Suicide Squad-esque. A specific scene with Quill and Groot jumping out of a certain area turned out to be a lot more brutal than I expected, and I was like, that was something he could have really done in something like Peacemaker. And all of this grittiness doesn't feel forced at all. I mean, there's also the fact that this is the first MCU movie to have fuck in it, and it doesn't feel forced at all. It's delivered calmly and normally, like all of these characters probably say it all of the time. And I can definitely see that its inclusion in this movie is gonna definitely pave the way for a character like, you know, Deadpool. And since this is a James Gunn movie, I want to talk about the soundtrack, because that man knows how to bring a phenomenal playlist. It's not a surprise because of Guardians 1, Guardians 2, Suicide Squad, everything's got great music in it. If anything, this time around, I was surprised about how similar my playlists are to his sometimes. I mean, by having these This Is the Day or having the Flaming Lips, Do You Realize? It makes me think that this might be one of the greatest soundtracks I've ever heard in a movie. Not counting original score, just, you know, soundtracks in general. And Florence and the Machine topping off the movie was just the icing on the cake. And the music also leads into one of the best fight sequences that we've ever seen in a superhero movie ever. Lots of evers are being dropped everywhere, but it's true. That fluid, one-shot take is just gorgeous. It really serves to emphasize how badass they really are. All in all, I can't recommend Guardians of the Galaxy enough. It's one of the most perfect finales to a trilogy that I've ever seen, and it honestly holds its own if you just watch it by itself. Something that you can't really say about a bunch of other Marvel movies. And it really shows that James Gunn is a guy that knows what the fuck he's doing. I have no qualms about him taking charge of the DCU now. I'm sure that he's actually gonna be able to find a balance between Superman and Batman, that dark and light aspect, just fine. It's just that now I'm probably in a position where I just can't wait to see what he does next. I'm hyped, and for good reason, because this was great. And I think that pretty much wraps up my thoughts on Guardians Volume 3. What do you think about it? Did you like it? Did I miss anything? Hey, let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. As always, I was Bayfond, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.